Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Friday, December the 8th, 2023. On Wednesday, there was a debate amongst four candidates for the Republican nomination, and I think it took place in Alabama. And one of those candidates was Chris Christie, former governor of New Jersey. Now, I haven't looked at his horoscope before, so that's what I want to do in this video. Now, he was born on September the 6th, 1962, but I do not have a time of birth, so there are limits to what I can say about him. Now, during that debate, there was a bit of an altercation between him and another candidate, Vivek Ramaswamy. So I do want to look at how the horoscopes of Chris Christie and Vivek Ramaswamy come together, and how they might clash. Now, it should be said that neither of those candidates have any chance of being the nomination for being the nominee, the Republican nominee. And I'm not saying that through astrology. I think you just have to follow the news and the polls. So there aren't any great things to be said about them. In the case of Vivek Ramaswamy, I think I've already done a horary chart, which says there is no chance that Vivek Ramaswamy is going to be a candidate to be president. Certainly not the president himself anytime soon. So I know some of the people watching this are fans of Vivek Ramaswamy, but he's not going to get anywhere near the White House, and that I think one can tell just with common sense, and also the astrology backs it up. Aside from that, on Wednesday there was a shooting at the University of Nevada in Las Vegas, and I very quickly want to look at the chart for that shooting. I think a 67-year-old man had applied for a job as a professor, and he didn't get the job, and he shot some people, killed some people. So yeah, I want to very quickly look at that chart, because there is one signature in that chart which is certainly worth taking note of. But before I do all that, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Friday, December the 8th, 2023. Right, so here is the chart. Top right, there is Chris Christie. So this chart is not particularly spectacular. You'll see that the moon is still in Libra. It's conjunct the South Node. So when you've got the moon conjunct the South Node, which is, something that happens every month, so it's not in itself a big deal, but when you do have moon on the South Node, you have to be careful about how you behave and how you respond to the world emotionally. Because the South Node represents the past, and so stuff from the past may elicit an emotional reaction, and our emotions, we might find ourselves responding emotionally in a way that we thought we'd grown out of. So watch your emotions very carefully, and be particularly careful if you're tempted to turn emotion into a visible response. We might respond to people through our words and behavior in a way which is not very constructive. So we need a bit of self-analysis here with node on the South Node, but it could be quite educational. So might be a good idea today to just observe your feelings. Just watch your feelings as they bubble to the surface, and ask yourself whether those feelings are healthy, whether they relate to the past, the distant past, even to a previous incarnation. But with the moon in Libra conjunct the South Node, moon in Libra is generally about it's about compromise. It's about agreement. It's about wanting to have balance. And with the moon conjunct the south node, that might not always be the right thing to do. So if someone says something that is upsetting or is wrong, it may not be the right thing to just say, oh, that's fine. You know, it's like on Facebook. Someone will say something completely outrageous, not outrageous, say something that is sort of, I don't know, they might be saying, oh, I'm going to have this tattoo, isn't it wonderful? And, you know, and everyone will say, oh, that's great, yeah, that's great, wonderful what you're doing. And maybe it's not the right thing to do. So if you see someone, for example, on Facebook saying something about themselves with moon conjunct Libra on the south node, don't just say, oh, that's great. You know, think about it. Are they really doing the right thing? And of course, not just Facebook, anywhere, not just even social media. Just if someone says something about themselves, don't just praise them for the sake of it. A bit of analysis would not go amiss. Remembering that the south node, where you've got the south node in Libra, you've got the north node in Aries, and possibly what we should be doing is we should be being more assertive. We should, if someone is doing something wrong, or we feel someone is doing something wrong, we shouldn't be afraid of telling them how we feel. Okay, we might lose their friendship, but maybe that's a price. The price we have to pay. Honesty. Honesty can be difficult, but sometimes it might be necessary, and maybe that's what's going on today. And in general, we should not be afraid of communicating our true feelings and thoughts, because Mercury is at around 7 Capricorn, Jupiter's 6.5 Taurus. So Mercury and Jupiter are still making this trine aspect. I think it's actually exact today. And Mercury trine Jupiter is about communication. Jupiter in Taurus is, I think, in many ways about being honest, because Jupiter in Taurus is very grounded. Jupiter in Taurus doesn't like to play with ideas. It just likes to expand as it sees fit. And so Mercury trine Jupiter, we shouldn't be afraid of expressing our feelings, and we might be pleasantly surprised. So, if someone is doing something that we believe is a major mistake, we might be afraid of upsetting them by telling them the truth. But maybe if we're open and honest about it, we will be appreciated, and the reaction might not be as bad as we had imagined. Having said that, the moon is moving into the Via Combusta. Now, the Via Combusta is between 15 Libra and 15 Scorpio. And the moon moves into the Via Combusta every month, so it's not exactly an unusual thing. Indeed, if you look at the moon's movement through the signs, probably, I don't know off the top of my head, 8% of the time the moon is in the Via Combusta or something like that. It's whatever 1/12 expressed as a percentage is, I should know, but I should know that exactly off the top of my head, but I haven't got my calculator to hand. So yeah, it's quite common, the moon being in the Via Combusta. Nonetheless, when the moon is in the Via Combusta, things happen which we haven't necessarily planned for, and if we do something, the reaction might be unexpected. Now, that's more of a problem when the moon goes into Scorpio, because right now the moon's in late Libra. It's quite close to the fixed star Speaker. Speaker tends to be a fortunate influence, so I don't think that sort of that randomness and unexpectedness of a Via Combusta is going to be quite as strong when the moon is in Libra from when it's in when it's in Scorpio. Now, another thing to point out is that the Sun has now moved into the last half of Sagittarius. So you can see that the Sun is now at 16 degrees 20 Sagittarius. So 15 Sagittarius is a halfway point. So yesterday, the Sun moved from the first half to the last half. Now, why is that important? Well, there is a view, I can't give you a citation offhand, but that the first half of, I think it's the first half of Sagittarius is the human half, and the last half is the animal half. Now, you might be thinking, well, why is that the case? Because the symbol of Sagittarius is the centaur, and the centaur is, I think, half horse, half human. And that is the nature of Sagittarius. And so it may be, in general, when you move into the last half of Sagittarius, the Sagittarius influence becomes wilder. It can't be tamed so much. We're dealing with the animal part of Sagittarius. So in general, things could start to become a bit more crazy. But I think it's quite a gentle influence. So yeah, so if you see people going crazy parties, people behaving in erratic ways, well, that's just the fact that we're in the animal half of the sign Sagittarius. Another point to make is that the planet Mars, as you can see, Mars is at 10 degrees Sagittarius. And Mars is on the fixed star Antares. So what does it mean having Mars on Antares? So I'm going to go to this book, The Fixed Stars and Constellations in Astrology by Vivian E. Robeson, BSc. That was written a long time ago, this book. And so what Vivian Robeson does is he just goes through all the fixed stars, all the major fixed stars. He talks about their influences. It's a good book to have. So, in terms of Mars on Antares, he starts off by talking about the general nature of Antares. He says it's a binary star, fiery red and emerald green, situated on the body of the Scorpion, from anti-Aries, similar to, or the rival of Mars. So, bit of conflict there. It was one of the 4 royal stars of Persia, and around, he says, 3000 BC. So it's of the nature of Mars and Jupiter. So Mars on Antares, it's very action orientated. If it's of the nature of Mars and Jupiter, it can bring great success, but it can also bring danger, particularly when it's associated with Mars. So what Vivian Robson says about Mars on Antares, he says, detrimental habits powerfully affecting the life, quarrels with friends and relatives, fairly favourable for gain. So it's not necessarily bad having Mars on Antares. It's certainly very action orientated, but we could have arguments, quarrels with friends. So, let's bring this all together. Mercury trine Jupiter, that's very communicative. We say what's on our mind. We've got the moon conjunct the south node. That's us trying to perhaps avoid quarrels, trying to tread very carefully. Moon conjunct the south node. But sometimes quarrels are necessary. As I've already said, with the South Node in Libra, we need to express ourselves. So you've got to use some judgment here. But yes, we could fall out with people with Mars conjunct this fixed star Antares. But as I said, it's not. Sometimes quarrels are necessary. So we'd really have to look at the situation and work out what the right thing to do is. Okay, so that's the broad astrological picture for today on Friday, December the 8th, 2023. And what I want to do now is look at my forecast for the 12 signs. So here goes. These are my forecasts for today, for the 12 signs, for Friday, December the 8th, 2023. Aries. There's a temptation to put too much energy into your social life and perhaps to care too much what people are doing and what they are not doing. The way forward is to be a typical Aries, to concentrate on yourself and your own inclinations and needs. It's a good day for discussing money in a matter-of-fact, unemotional way. Taurus. It's okay to dream. There are many possibilities, and what sounds crazy might actually be possible. In the process, you might have to confront your own stubbornness. If you've been spending too long going in the same direction, it might be time for a change of course. When talking to other people, the things you say will make perfect sense. Gemini. It's easy to be selfish, putting everyone else's priorities to one side. But if you think for a moment, then you'll realize that a more social, empathetic approach will work better in terms of achieving your goals. By making time for other people, you're investing for the future and also making important contacts. Happiness is a collective enterprise. Cancer. With the moon continuing its movement through Libra, it's tempting to follow the crowd and to avoid doing anything controversial, because everyone wants a quiet life. However, there are things going on that need to be challenged, and you may have to be critical. And if you don't assert yourself, then the moment or the opportunity may be lost. Leo. You might think that you've got a lot of time in which to complete a particular task, and in theory you might be right, but over the course of a day things could happen which have a shrinking effect on the window of availability. It's therefore important that you're well prepared and that you do as much as possible, as early as possible. Virgo. There is a lot of garbage around you, things that no one needs, ideas that don't make any sense, and it's easy to be overwhelmed by the whole thing. Yet Mercury, your ruler, is still making a fortunate aspect to Jupiter. You can cut through the chaos and reach out to the things that really matter. Libra. You want things to be simple, to skim the surface without having to make big commitments. But events are getting more complicated, and at some stage you'll have to commit time and energy. After all, these are foundational issues that you're dealing with. Yet, what is buried can turn out to be very fortunate in the light of day. Scorpio. Your inclination is to hang back and not get involved with the dramas of everyday living. But everything is connected, and it's probably better to deal with the world head-on, or at least to take active steps to work out what is happening. And in many cases, one phone call, one question can calm everything down in a big way. Sagittarius. You're full of enthusiasm, and you take the view that with enough positivity, just about anything is possible. While it's true that you're very convincing, you may find that you're arriving on the scene too early. In the end, you will get your way, but right now, people aren't quite ready for you. So overall, it's a question of patience. Capricorn. You've got a lot of plans, and you perhaps feel that if you don't act now, you could be too late. You may or may not be right, but it would be a mistake to think that anyone else shares your view of the world, and persuasive arguments on your part may not be enough. So maybe you just have to do what you think is right, even if that means acting alone. Aquarius. What is it that makes you special? You certainly have your own ideas, but the talents you want to present to the world may not be the talents that will be most appreciated, and you must consider the possibility that the abilities you choose not to reveal are the ones that are most in demand. So don't try too hard to be different. Pisces. For Pisceans, it's quite an action-orientated time. You have discipline as well as vision, and you can distinguish between the right and the wrong path. But don't spend too much time thinking and feeling about it. And in particular, avoid discussing topics that you've already made up your mind about, because too much talking could wear you down. So those are the 12 signs, and now I want to look at the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Friday going to be like for those watching this video? And the first hexagram I got was enthusiasm. So yes, we are enthusiastic. We feel relatively positive about the future. We feel that things are going to happen, that we feel we've got everything under control, and that things are moving our way. An alternative description of this hexagram is contentment. That's Greg Winkup. His translation is one that I've recently started to use. It's very good. And yeah, he says contentment. So we're happy with the way things are. We're excited in a sort of gentle kind of way, but we don't really feel that we have to really make things happen right now. Why should we? Because it's going to happen anyway. At least that's what we might think. Now, this hexagram, enthusiasm, has 3 moving lines. That's quite a lot. It's quite a busy hexagram. So 3rd line from the bottom moves, the 5th line from the bottom moves, and the top line moves. So what does that mean? Well, 3rd line moves. Now, as I think I said recently, the 3rd line from the bottom in a hexagram is often unfortunate. It's often problematic. And the danger here is that the moment for action is actually arriving, and we're not ready. We hesitate. We think about it. Oh, is this the right thing to do? Maybe not. Maybe. Remember, Moon's in Libra. We're always trying to balance, work out what should we do? Should we do this? Should we do that? Oh, don't want to upset anyone. That's Moon in Libra conjunct the South Node. And then by the time we've made up our mind, it's too late. The moment has gone. So be careful. Be careful there. Then the 5th line moves, and our enthusiasm is really beginning to turn into something quite sort of darker. We sort of feel we just don't feel up to it. We just feel sort of maybe a bit under the weather. We just don't feel able to deal with the challenges around us. It's almost like we might feel that everything hurts. And in fact, the I Ching talks about being ill but not dying with this 5th line. Don't take that literally. Okay, the fact that we're ill puts us on our, because, maybe ill at ease, puts us on our alert. We are on the alert for problems, so we're not going to be destroyed by it. But our enthusiasm is really running out of steam here. And then the final line moves, the top line, and it's kind of more of the same, but it's kind of where the whole thing peaks, and we realize at this stage that the whole basis of our enthusiasm is nothing. It's delusion. We've deluded ourselves. The very thing that we started this hexagram with, that excitement, we were hoping that something good was going to happen. We had these fantasies about the future, and then we realize it's not going to happen. But in a way, that's good, because we're coming down to earth. We can see the world around us for what it is. We can see the difficulties for what they are, and there is no delusion, no illusion. And that's possibly a good place to be, and that leads to the movement to the next hexagram, which is hexagram 33. Now, hexagram 33 is retreat. I mean, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? I mean, as our enthusiasm runs out of steam, as we realize that perhaps a couple of things we're involved in are not going to work out, we take a step back. And that is absolutely the right thing to do. There's nothing wrong with taking a step back. If we're in a situation where we can't make any progress, what is the point in wasting more energy on it? It's, what do they call it? The sunken cost fallacy. We might think that we have to keep putting effort into something because we've already put so much effort into it that we don't want to waste that effort. But really, there comes a point where we say, no, this is not going to work. Now, Greg Winkup, he has actually a more positive view of 33. I think he calls it the piglet, which at first you think, wow, what does that mean? The piglet for 33? And what he's saying here is the piglet is a small animal because it's a baby pig, and the baby pig is going to, obviously at some stage, is going to grow into a big pig, and a pig is potentially quite a big, scary thing. So the piglet hangs back. It doesn't go out into the world. It just stays into its pen and fattens itself up. And it makes itself stronger. And then perhaps if you look forward, at a certain point, it will be in a position to go into the world, and because it's no longer a piglet, because it's eaten its fill, it's got its strength up, it will be able to deal with the world and its challenges. So there is an optimistic way of looking at retreat. We retreat because we need to build our strength. We can't deal with it. We can't deal with something at the moment. Build our strength, and then at a later date we can go out into the world and do what we need to do, and if we do it right, be successful. Okay, so that is the I Ching, and I now want to look at some astrology. I want to start off by very quickly looking at the shooting in Las Vegas. Now, I haven't really read loads and loads about this. I haven't read a great deal about it, but I just thought here's the chart. Here's the chart for the shooting. So it happened December the 6th, and I believe it happened at 11:45. Now, there are shootings all over the place. There was another shooting. I was just reading the local news here on the I-5 in Washington State. Someone had fired 2 shots at 2 cars. No one was killed, but someone was hit in the neck. It's like there was another shooting, at a completely different time. But this shooting at in Las Vegas, it obviously hit the news because people were killed, and it happened in a university. So this, when you're dealing with a chart of a shooting, you have to consider what makes it special to that particular place, and you do have to look at the ascendant and the midheaven. Things that move, things that are personal, not necessarily personal, but sort of individual to that location. And so, when you think about shooting, I suppose the first planet you think about is Mars. I mean, Mars is the planet of violence, aggression. So Mars is in the ninth house by Placidus at 853 Sagittarius. So in the ninth house can be connected with higher learning and universities. So Mars in the ninth house, in the Placidus ninth house, kind of fits with the symbolism of a shooting in a university. And Mars is also exact at that time, assuming I got the time right. The time I got was 11:45. May not be exactly 11:45, but if you take 11:45, Mars is exactly square the ascendant. And so I think that is a good signature of a shooting. Of course, I understand I'm using hindsight here, but that's really what I noticed about the shooting. I did look very hard for the birth details of the shooter. All I know is he's 67 years old. Couldn't find any birth details. I would have liked to have said more, but that's really all I'm going to say about the Nevada shooting. Now I want to look at the debate which was on Wednesday, involving the four candidates. Three of the four candidates I've already I've already looked at their charts, but the person whose chart I haven't looked at is Chris Christie. So he was the governor of New Jersey. He's been trying to get the Republican nomination for years. It was generally thought that his political career, his political prospects came to a sort of a grinding halt in 2013 with the Bridgegate scandal. I think he was having an argument with some mayor in New Jersey, and he closed the bridge, or his officials closed the bridge, and it was seen that this closing of a bridge was almost to deliberately cause a traffic jam to get at his opponents, his political opponents, people he disagreed with, it was called Bridgegate, and it's always going to come up, and I think that caused him huge amounts of damage. So what do we know about Chris Christie? He is a very good debater. I think when Republican candidates have mock debates with to sort of to get ready for debating Democrats, I think Chris Christie is often used as has been used as someone to pretend to be a Democrat. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but like so many politicians, it's just another lawyer. I think it's probably the case that in politics, lawyers should be banned from standing for office. I think that would be good. I mean, not just in America, in the UK as well. It's just, they're too familiar with the system. So I think there is a case for banning lawyers from standing. That's probably not constitutional, but anyway, he's just another lawyer. And you can see that he has got his Mercury at 10. Again, it's a noon chart. He's got his Mercury at 10 Libra, and it's square Mars. Sort of Mercury square Mars is verbally aggressive. So if you want to be a courtroom lawyer and attack your opponents, attack the other side. Having Mercury square Mars can be very useful. At the same time, he's a Virgo. You can see he's got a Sun Pluto conjunction in Virgo. Now, if you are, in fact, this chart rings a bell because I'm sorry, I'm going to sort of change subjects and look at another chart which I wasn't planning on looking at. This chart rings a bell. Now, Keir Starmer, who is opposition leader in the UK, also a lawyer, head of he is head of the Labour Party. If the Tories lose in Britain, he'll be the Prime Minister. So at the moment, according to the polls, Keir Starmer is heading for number 10 Downing Street. So you can see that he has got. He was born on September the 2nd, 1962. So he was born only 4 days before Chris Christie. And again, Keir Starmer was a very effective lawyer. So sorry to mention that. Okay, let's go back to Chris Christie. So Chris Christie, who was born 4 days after Labour leader Keir Starmer, has a Sun-Pluto conjunction in Virgo. That allows him to really get into the details of a case. Whatever you think about him, I suspect that most people watching this don't have a particularly good opinion of Chris Christie, but I think you need to give him credit for his ability. If you look at how he debates, he is very effective. He's got his Mars sextile Pluto. I mean, again, that makes that allows him to assert himself in a very powerful way. Moon in Sagittarius. Moon in Sagittarius. Donald Trump has Moon in Sagittarius. Moon in Sagittarius can be quite brutally honest. It says, the moon is a communication planet. It's more about emotional communication. So he can the moon. So in Sagittarius, he's not afraid of telling people what he thinks. So that's his moon. We don't know exactly where his moon is because I'm taking a midday chart. It's just possible he's got moon in Scorpio. If he was born right at the beginning of the day, if he was born, I don't know, at, say 12:30 at night at the beginning of September the 6th, but chances are he has got the moon in Sagittarius. So his moon will be anywhere between 0 Sagittarius and, say, 12-13 Sagittarius. So I think we can be fairly certain, not totally certain, but we can be probably 95%, 90% certain that he has got his moon in Sagittarius. And that moon in Sagittarius may give us some indications about his weight issues. The moon is about fluctuation. The moon is about the tides. The moon is about how you respond emotionally to the world around you, what you do to protect yourself, what you do, to reassure yourself. So eating can be an issue with the moon. Moon, I suppose, can also be about glandular function, the liquid in our body and how it changes. And assuming he really was born at noon, then you can see that moon would be square his Jupiter. So that's quite a strong Jupiter in Pisces. Jupiter can be about excess. We could see that moon square Jupiter being about overweight, someone who is difficult to control, about someone who finds it difficult to control their weight. And it's, it's some kind of, maybe it's some kind of defense, or he's looking for some kind of nurturing. Moon is about sort of early, one's early childhood. By the way, he's a politician. I can say this kind of stuff. He's public property, so I don't think I'm being too intrusive using astrology to kind of work out why he might be, might have his weight issues. So I would have said that that his weight issues are connected with that moon square Jupiter, maybe the moon square Pluto as well. So he was born with a Jupiter-Pluto opposition. Now that Jupiter-Pluto opposition was really around for all of 1962. I've got a Jupiter-Pluto opposition, for example. But the fact he's got his moon on a Jupiter opposition means that he has a sort of an emotional response to dealing with what's going on around him, and maybe he's picking up on it all, and maybe the eating is some kind of defense, and it must be a real issue. I think he's had some kind of surgery to reduce, because I think he's lost quite a lot of weight recently. But yeah, moon square Jupiter would probably could probably help explain it. But again, I do not have a time of birth. So, as I said at the beginning of this video, you really do need a time of birth if you want to talk about, health and longevity and that kind of thing. Without a time of birth, you're a bit in the dark, really. So that's Chris Christie. Now, he had an argument with Vivek Ramaswamy. I didn't really look at the video, but I think Vivek Ramaswamy was attacking Nikki Haley for her views on foreign policy. I think Vivek Ramaswamy was suggesting that Nikki Haley couldn't name 3 oblasts in eastern Ukraine. Chris Christie, like Nikki Haley, he's a neocon. He wants America to keep intervening in Ukraine, to keep going with its proxy war. Chris Christie, he said something. I couldn't find the precise quotation, but recently he said, when talking about Ukraine, by the way, he said that it's kind of good value, America's intervention, what America's doing in the Ukraine, because it's supposedly destroying a really high percentage of Russia's army. I don't know whether it was 50% or 90%. So that's a good deal, and it's only costing America something like 3% of its of its defense budget. So he was using those arguments to justify why it's okay for America to keep supporting the war in Ukraine, which is a pretty awful thing to say, because firstly, he's completely overestimated the damage done to the Russian army, and secondly, he's completely underestimating the damage done to Ukraine. 500,000 Ukrainians dead. Good deal for America, isn't it? That, I suppose, that's about being a neocon. Maybe that's also about being a Virgo. Maybe a Virgo would say something like that. Just focusing on the details, looking at the facts, the money, knowing the price of everything and the value of nothing. Certainly not seeming to have any acknowledgement of the value of human life. But yeah, I just wanted to put that in. So as far as this argument with Vivek Ramaswamy, well, Vivek Ramaswamy, I think, told Chris Christie to go out for lunch, a rather cruel reference to Chris Christie's weight. So as far as how the two of them come to, how they relate to each other. Okay, so we have got, there's Chris Christie's chart in the middle. and there is Vivek Ramaswamy's chart on the outer ring. I think the general consensus, by the way, is that Vivek Ramaswamy did not have a good evening. Vivek Ramaswamy, okay, he's got his. There's Vivek Ramaswamy's moon in 0 Gemini. So Saturn is just gone stationary direct. Beginning of November, just about a month ago, and it went stationary direct, square to Vivek Ramaswamy's moon. And the moon is the people, the public. Saturn stationing square his moon. That might have signaled kind of the end of his campaign, but there's a limit to how far he can go. Okay, his campaign is not finished, but he's still feeling, I think, the impact of Saturn. So what's interesting about his chart is that there is Chris Christie's Mars at 9 Cancer, and there is Vivek Ramaswamy's Venus at 8 Cancer. So that's a weird combination. Now, if it was a sort of Venus-Mars, in a romantic sense, Venus-Mars is often seen as a very compelling aspect from a romantic. If this was a male-female romance, that Venus-Mars would be a very compelling connection. Although what usually happens when someone's in romantic relationships, marriages, whatever, if for example, if you've got, for example, a woman's Venus conjunct a man's Mars, it's compelling, but in the end, the woman's Venus finds the man's Mars disgusting or repellent. In the end. So I don't know if we apply this to Vivek Ramaswamy. There's his Venus in Cancer, with Chris Christie's Mars here. Now, it may be that Vivek Ramaswamy does find Chris Christie in some way repellent. Who knows about Vivek Ramaswamy's aesthetics and whatever? Maybe Vivek Ramaswamy is concerned, looks at this man who's overweight and just finds that really kind of kind of repellent. He's thinking, why can't this man control it? Okay, I know Chris Christie has lost a lot of weight recently. That may be part of it. Venus is in Cancer. Venus is the way Vivek Ramaswamy relates to the people around him, and it seems to annoy Chris Christie. That's his Mars comes into play, and he starts getting annoyed, and he got annoyed. Chris Christie was getting annoyed because Vivek Ramaswamy was being nasty to Nikki Haley and slighting her, suggesting she didn't know what she didn't, slighting her knowledge, particularly of Ukraine. So Chris Christie comes in to defend Nikki Haley and whatever. That's kind of, but Chris Christie did that a bit with Donald Trump. He kind of, along, 2016, he tried to be friends with Donald Trump. Then he fell out with Donald Trump. So maybe he's doing the same thing. Maybe this is his strategy. He chooses a candidate who, he's thinking about the future. Maybe he's thinking if Nikki Haley becomes president, he might get a place in her administration or whatever. So there was that argument. I think Venus-Mars had something to do with it. Also, there is Vivek Ramaswamy's moon, and it was square. It was square Chris Christie's Uranus. So something about the way Vivek Ramaswamy communicated expressed himself. Moon in Gemini. Vivek Ramaswamy's got lots of things to say. He's a very smooth talker. But he's more of a Gemini smooth talker. Chris Christie is more aggressive in the way he communicates. With Vivek Ramaswamy, it's all sort of ideas. But Chris Christie's Uranus is on that moon, so basically the way Vivek Ramaswamy communicates activates Chris Christie's Uranus. Also, moon opposition moon. Vivek Ramaswamy's moon in Gemini, and Chris Christie's moon in Sagittarius. So their moons are opposite each other, Gemini and Sagittarius. So Gemini, says all sorts of stuff in a kind of light, maybe quite playful way. But then moon in Sagittarius has to respond using strong language. If you want to look at the kind of language they were using, I'm not going to talk about it here. You can look it up. So you can see why there might have been a bit of a conflict there between Chris Christie and Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm not going to say anything else about this because neither of these men is going to be the nominee. So there's no pressure on me to make any astrological predictions because we're already with Vivek Ramaswamy. I've already looked at his astrology and I've done a horary chart. He has absolutely no chance in a practical sense and astrologically of being the nominee in 2024. With Chris Christie, I haven't asked that question astrologically, but I think from a political, if you look at the polls and everything else, that there's no chance. So those are a few thoughts on Vivek Ramaswamy and Chris Christie. I'm sorry to have been so brief, and I probably should have done a bit more research before talking about them. But that might be a springboard for something else in the future. So yes, I hope you found that of some use, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.